Some of our students will be joining us later. Elvia So and her husband, Derek Chu. We're going to do a case study on something that they're actually working on in a small town, Ontario. We're going to start that next. They can't join us right away because they have a new baby. And the baby has to go for, I think, a 1-month checkup here. So they'll join us a little later, and we're going to start on their project. We're going to talk about their project a little later. But what I wanted to do right now, and at least initially, was I want to talk more about the actual name of the course, which is the Backyard Oasis. And the way that you start with any project, at least in my way of thinking, is you start with something quite small and then you expand on it. You know, when I was much younger, I lived in Australia for many years. And when hang gliders came to Australia, this was in the 1970s, early 1970s. Hang gliding, as you know, is just like a kite, and you put yourself underneath it and you fly off cliffs and what have you. When hang gliding first came to Australia in the early 1970s from California, I was among the first 100 or so young people, mostly stupid young men, who bought a hang glider or who made a homemade one, and we started to learn how to fly. For me, I went to the sand dunes south of Sydney, and I started jumping off of 20-foot sand dunes in the hope that if I made a mistake and I crashed, I wouldn't kill myself, which turned out to be true because here I am. But yeah, you know, and then after I got comfortable with the aerodynamics of the kite and learned more about hang gliding, I started to become a little bit more adventurous. And we flew in the thermals in South Australia. You know, we would take our kites up to 5,000 feet, right? So we went from jumping off of sand dunes to something quite a bit more adventurous. And I remember going to the North Shore of Sydney, where there was about a 500-foot cliff. And you've got 8,000 miles, you know, I don't know, 14,000 kilometers of Pacific Ocean with these beautiful steady winds coming in at about 9 knots. And we could fly up on these cliffs for hours at a time, just flying back and forth like this. And one time when I went there with my group, there was a young man who was not far away, and he was bolting together his kite and looking at the instructions. And I went over to talk to him and I said, "Have you ever flown a hang glider before?" And he said, you know, that Australian accent of his, "No, hey, she'll be right. You know, pull in, go down, push out, go up, lean left, go left, you know, lean right, go right. She'll be right." I said, "Well, you know, we started in the sand dunes, and the long reef is pretty tricky. You know, you should be careful." "Oh, nah, she'll be right, mate." So he gets himself into the harness and he leaps off a 500-foot cliff. He goes into a nose stall, so his nose drops like that, and he descends headfirst into the rocks below. He kills himself in a few seconds. And it was, you know, so we didn't fly that day. We had to find our way down the cliff, and we hoped to find him alive, but he was not. He had passed away. It's a sad story, but if you guys know something about the Darwin Awards, he won a Darwin Award that time. He took himself out of the gene pool. And the reason I tell you that story is it is relevant, I think, to the MacBunkie story I'm going to talk about before we deal with a bigger project towards the end of this lecture. In other words, complexity is the enemy of success. And if you find somebody has a business model, an idea, a project that is so complicated that you can't understand it, and this does happen, I hear them quite often, it's likely to fail. And if you think, and certainly as many young people do, that you can fly before you crawl, that's probably not going to work either. And I think, Ziad, you might actually think about that a little bit, because what you want to do, whether it's real estate, it's technology, it's a service business, is you want to crawl, walk, run, and fly. Okay, that's my advice. And there are some people who can just leap off a 500-foot cliff and survive that. But for everyone that does, there's probably 10 million that wouldn't. So I don't want you to take those kinds of risks. Now, having said that, I've taken some really dumb risks in my career, so I'm being a bit of a two-faced liar here, okay? So I apologize. All right, enough of that. Oh, next week, we do not have a class. It's our kind of a study week and take a break. You're probably sick of me already. So next Thursday, there's no class. And then, so 2 weeks from today, there's class number 4. And a week after that, there's class number 5. So by the end of October, we will be finished. And, people like Amy and Greg, Ziad, certainly Janice and Tina Ray and others, Paul, have been reaching out to me and asking me questions. But for those of you who have not, Mary Ellen and Robin, well, Robin asks lots of questions. But for those of you who have not reached out to me with some questions, feel free to do so. I enjoy working with students, and obviously I like coaching, mentoring, and teaching. So if you have something that you need some help on, reach out to me. That's what I'm here for. Having said all of that, I would like you all, and I've said it by email, and I'm going to say it one more time. I'd like you all to come up with 2 questions in the next 2 weeks. That's not too much to ask, right? 2 questions in the next 2 weeks. Janice, I already have your questions, but 2 questions in the next 2 weeks. And I think, Woody, I've got some from you as well. 2 questions that you think are relevant to the course, all right? And that I think that you think I might be able to help you with, or maybe the class can help you with, okay? So send me those 2 questions, and not today, not next week, but sometime in the next 2 weeks, in addition to sending me the 2 questions, send me 2 or 3 short paragraphs on what your goals are for the next 6 months to 2 years. I'm not interested in 5-year goals or 10-year goals because, again, in my experience, a 5-year plan and a 10-year plan is worthless. I'm sorry to break the news here. I'm sure many people don't agree with that, but a 5-year plan or a 10-year plan is nothing but a wish, a hope, and a prayer, in my opinion. All right. Think about the changes that we've seen in this economy, and not to mention the global economy, in the last 2.5 years. It's incredible. I mean, who would have thought that AI would break so soon and change so many things? Real estate's in a recession in many parts of Canada, the United States. Different sectors are in a recession. Who would have thought interest rates would go from 1 or 2% to 7 or 8% as quickly as they did? So many things that worked 2.5 years ago, or 3 years ago, or 4 years ago, certainly 5 years ago, don't work today. So with all due respect to people who do long-term plans, for most of us, not all of us, but for most of us, that's worthless. So and it has to be short. I'm not going to read 10 pages, okay? So if you send me 2 questions and you send me, listen, these are my goals for the next 6 months, 12 months, 24 months. And that's probably all that human beings can do. Beyond that, we can't plan, in my opinion. All right, so let's see what we can do together over the next year or 2. As long as I'm around and able to help, I will. All right, so that's enough of that. All right, so I'm going to share my screen with you guys, and you've all seen this before, but we're going to do a deep dive into, this might be one of the smallest projects I've ever done. And as you know, this is in our backyard. It's called the MacBunkie, at least I call it the MacBunkie. My wife's last name is Macmillan, and so I call it the MacBunkie. She hates that name, but I like it. And in the middle frame here is the young immigrant that from Brazil that my wife has kind of adopted, and he's living in our backyard bunkie. It was supposed to be for my children and grandchildren, but Don has made it available to this nice young man. He is a drywaller and a good guy, and he's here from Brazil to learn English and to earn some money to help his child, who is his 4-year-old son, who is sick in Brazil. And there's some elements to this that I think are really important. First of all, as you guys know, I've said it before, Ontario changed its building code to allow backyard sheds, backyard offices, backyard bunkies that are a maximum of 15 square meters without a building permit. And that's 161.5 square feet. So this bunkie that you see here is exactly 160 square feet. It's only 10 feet wide by 16 feet. And the smaller the space is, the more creativity you have to bring to the design. And my wife is very good at this. On the left-hand side and the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see a mini ping pong table. I can tell you that whether I build industrial buildings multi-res buildings, office buildings, or residential buildings, I add something I call a playland. And most people, when they think of a playland, they think of structures, for little kids to play on, a jungle gym or whatever they call them today. That is not what I'm referring to. I'm referring to things that virtually all generations can do. So people my age, I'm a grandfather, I could play, mini ping pong with my grandchildren. I could play with my adult children. So to me, a playland is something that all generations can participate in. So a 3-on-3 basketball court is not part of what I see as a playland. That's usually where teens hang out, smoke weed, and play ball. Whereas a pickleball court is something that, all generations can participate in. One of my clients, she's 86. She is a fantastic pickleball player, and she's 86, and she's addicted to the game. She plays like 3 hours twice a week. So here you see a mini ping pong table, which works. And I put these into residential apartments. I put them into, office spaces. I put them into industrial parks. And my theory is that tenants, guests, workers, whatever, who play together, and by the way, couples who play together, stay together. And you can see young Arthur here from Brazil is in the middle of this screen. He's got a nice electric motorcycle. That happens to be mine. I loaned it to him. So here was the preliminary floor plan. And you have to understand that a lot of the ideas for architecture, for animation, which means adding revenues, and Greg and Amy, you're gonna have to give me a thumbs up on this, I think. Unfortunately, it doesn't come typically from your realtor or your architect or your designer. Architects are very good at drawing pretty buildings. They love pretty, and there's nothing wrong with pretty buildings. I think that's very useful. But in terms of the usefulness and the function of the space and the ROI, the return on investment, not just for you as an owner, but for your guests, your residents, your passersby, your city, your town, all of that stuff. Unfortunately, designers and realtors and professional engineers and others, they will not be able to do this. This is up to you guys. All right, you have to come up with the ideas. And Greg and Amy, the ideas that you've come up with for your property on Salt Spring Island and the way you're going to finesse the zoning is exactly right. That's not coming from anybody else but you two, with a little help maybe from me. All right, so here is all we did was we put on a graph paper this shed, which was purchased from North Country Sheds. And as I said, it's only 10 feet wide by 16 feet deep. And it has not one, but 2 doors. It has a window here, 2 windows on this side, and another window here. So this is where the WC, the water closet or the bathroom went. This is where the little kitchen is. This is the sleeping area. This is the work area. This is a little table and chairs. This was the original concept for this. And you'll see in a few minutes that it was a good sketch, but that's not actually what happened. It's similar, but not exact. And I'm a civil engineer, so this is the best drawing I could come up with. An architect could certainly do a better job. An artist like you, Greg, I'm sure could do a better job. But for me, this is what I did. So there's a lot of sketching that goes on, and there's nothing wrong with you guys, any of you, attempting to do your own sort of sketch, highest and best use, site plan. In fact, I think you should do this. You should draw it. And I don't care if you're a terrible drawer like me, do it. So here's what I did. This is our lot is quite a big lot. And there's a house here, there's an existing deck here, there's a hedge here, and sort of where is it going to go on the property? It has to look like it kind of fits. It has to, this fitting a structure on a piece of land is often a gut feeling, an instinct. It is not something that, that again, zoning codes or planners or architects, surveyors, they don't know. You have to have a feeling in your gut. I think this structure should go here. It would look good here. It would fit there. It would somehow feel right. So there's some instinct involved here. So this is our backyard that I kind of sketched here. There's a big hedge back there, which you'll see in a minute. And I thought this is where the bunkie should go. Then we kind of drew it up on a site plan. I think my youngest son, Matthew, did this. And then there was a question, I'm sure you guys are going to ask me, how the heck are we going to get the shell in the backyard? And so the idea was there's a low curb on this street here. We could, this might be a Ford 150 or maybe 250 or 350. This is the trailer that the shed would come in. They can back in here and drop it onto a gravel pad. So this is kind of what I sketched as to how we would do it. And I think somebody has asked me, if you couldn't get it into the backyard, how would you do that? Well, I would hire a crane and I would just, either put it right over the house, because these cranes are unbelievable. I could put it into the backyard with a crane, over the hedge, or even over the house. So I would find a way to do it. All right, so here are some pictures of what's involved. So this shed that we bought from North Country Sheds, it only requires a gravel pad. So we hired a company by the name of Lalonde Excavating, and they come in, they strip the topsoil, and they put a gravel pad in here for us. And even that is, there's some science to that and some practical techniques. You want to make sure it's packed down pretty well. You want this pad to be stable. So obviously you have to strip away the topsoil, put it on the bearing capacity of the subsoil. So that's what we did. So Paul Lalonde and Charlotte Lalonde came in and put this in, and you can see that it's compacted as well. So it is a hell of a pad. It'll be there for many, many years. And then before we brought the shell in, we had to dig trenches, and we talked about this as well. The trenches connect sewer, water, and electricity to the main home. So you can see there's quite a bit of trenching that went on. Our soil conditions in this part of the world are very good. It's all, or mostly, sand, so easy digging, right? So there's no problem with that. One of the key things that we had to do, obviously, was connect the sanitary sewer for this little bunkie to our sanitary sewer in our house. And you can see the stack here. That is the sanitary stack. It's kind of, I don't know if you'll be able to see it on this. There's the pad there, and you can sort of see it sticking up about 4 inches, about 10 centimeters. And you'll see on the next slide, we had to, when we brought the shell in, we had to position it exactly over the stack. So we had to get it exactly right. And you'll see how difficult that was. This is my foot here. You can see my running shoe here. It's just to get, all right. All right. So on the next slide, you'll see here, this is now the delivery of the shell from North Country Sheds in Smith Falls. So that's probably about a 45-minute trek to this particular property. And you can see he's backing in the trailer here, and it's a tilt bed trailer that he's going to tilt this thing, and he has to make sure that he puts it in exactly the right place. You'll see that better on the next slide. So there's the operator. He has a little remote control. If you've ever had, a remote control car or remote control boat, it's pretty much what he uses. And he has a tongue on this thing, so he can move it this way. And he also has adjustments that he can move it that way. So he can actually move this in 3 dimensions with his little remote control. And then you can see some markings here. These markings were to help us mount this thing, launch this thing, put this thing down exactly where it had to be. It took us 1 hour and 20 minutes to maneuver until we got it exactly right, and then we dropped it in place. So I'm not sure if there's a better way to do it, but maybe there is. But that's what we did, and I was there as stoop advising. Now you can see the shell inside here. These sheds, by the way, I've had a number of these sheds built by the Amish and built by companies like North Country Sheds. They last a long time. Many of them have metal roofs, they are timber frame, and they last at least 40 years. Now, how do I know that? Because I have some that are still usable after 40 years. So these are good. The steel ones that you buy from, Lowe's or Home Depot, and at least in Canadian winters in Eastern Ontario, they don't last a single winter. Their roof collapses, they're garbage after a year or two. So I certainly recommend these. The other ones are cheaper, but if they don't last more than a year or two, they're really not worth anything. Just some more trenching photos that you can see here as we get ready to connect it up for electrical. And I think this is a picture of the Electrical Safety Authority inspector, because obviously we had to have this approved by Electrical Safety Authority, make sure it was safe. And as Woody certainly will remember, and Michelle, his wife, will remember, when they were working on their project, getting the certificate of acceptance from the ESA is important. It's an important part of your insurance. The bunkie is part of our insurance package, and we disclose that it is being used for residential occupancy to our insurance company, and they understand that, and they have insured it appropriately. And this is one of their requirements, right? To have an Electrical Safety Authority inspection and a certificate of acceptance. And that's pretty much true anywhere in North America. Okay, after that, you can see that we had this thing wired for electrical. So there's the electrical installations. You can sort of see them on the screen here. And then this gentleman came along with this trailer that he was towing with his F-150, excuse me, I think. Anyway, his truck was towing this thing, and he was there to do spray foam installation. So obviously you put your electrical in and then you spray foam it. Now, this gentleman, when he spray foamed it, he did a really fantastic job. Every sort of nook and cranny is spray foamed. So the insulation on this building is fantastic. Mind you, it'll be the first winter that it's occupied, so maybe I speak too soon, but I think it'll do very, very well. On the left over here, the top left, there's the reverse cycle heat pump. So you guys have asked me about it. It's obviously run by electricity. It's very efficient. It's supposedly more green than other forms of heating and air conditioning, but you can produce abundant heat and cooling from this unit. And you're going to see all the costs in a minute. And then, of course, once the electrical's been done and the spray foam's been done and the reverse cycle heat pump on the right here has been installed, this is our crew here. They've been working with us for more than 25 years. Most of them, some of them a little bit less, but at least 15 years. They came in, and obviously it was now time to drywall this thing. So that's what they're doing. And you can sort of see it coming together. Many of you have seen this already. It's got lots of windows. It's got 2 doors. It's a small area, but it's amazing. This area here, right next to the second door, is in fact a small kitchen area. And I cannot believe what my wife and her team were able to do with this. You'll see it in a minute. It's phenomenal what they were able to put into such a small space. This is the shower. It's being installed and it's being tiled. There's the sink in the bathroom here. There's the mini fridge. It's a very small fridge, small buildings, small appliances. And on the left here, you could see the kitchen coming together. It's incredible what they got. They've got a sink here. They've got lots of cupboard space and a nice backsplash. And it really, really, really works. And as I said earlier, the smaller the space, the more imagination and creativity required. You notice also, of course, it's got a cathedral ceiling, which I think is very important because, again, it's a small area, but volume does count. They tell me, and I'm not sure, maybe Tina Ray, you would agree with this. They tell me that if you're struggling with creativity, go into a space that has higher ceilings. That apparently human beings, if you're trying to unleash your creativity, solve a problem, go into a space that has higher ceilings, or maybe even go outside and take a walk, which I did before we started this class. So this cathedral ceiling is really important. And you notice that we have a fan to move the air. It's very important in these small buildings to deal with humidity. All right, and look at this. There was a little nook here on the left, if you could see my cursor moving up and down. And so Patrick O'Connor, who is our lead contractor, and my wife put a wine rack in here. So every space is filled with interesting little tidbits. And then my wife is a great cook, and I have years of experience, and I have benefited from it. And so she has equipped this little bunkie with every kind of imaginable, thing you can as far as cooking is concerned. This is a hot plate here, and then all kinds of really cool stuff that she's put in this little thing. Now you can start to see it coming together here. That's the electrical panel. This is actually a little cupboard with a a blind that comes down so that you can, close it off. There's quite a bit of technology in this thing. And then here's the kitchen closer to being finished. And I asked one of my contractors just to open up the cupboard so you could see. It's pretty friggin' efficient, right? Coffee maker, hot plate, all kinds of good things going on here. Now, on the left of the screen, there's the door to the bathroom. There's a large screen TV. I think that's a toaster oven, or maybe it's a microwave. There's the mini fridge, more storage here. Now, you remember in the original plan, that was going to be a desk and a chair, small table and a chair, a couple chairs. That did not work. So they did something else instead, which actually worked out pretty good. If we were doing it again, we would probably have made this bed, one of those Murphy beds that go up against the wall and down. Some of these Murphy beds, when they go up, there's actually a desk that comes out, and then it folds like that and becomes a bed. But we didn't do that, but it worked out pretty well. All right, here's some more. This is now the bathroom when it's finished. It's really actually fantastic. It's got a very nice shower, nice bathroom. The windows have been, they're not opaque, they're translucent. So there's a film that we put on the windows so that, somebody who's there will have some privacy, right? So that's what we used in the bathroom. We would not use curtains. Curtains tend to, get moldy and they tend to tear and they look ratty after a year or two. So we put a special film on the windows in the bathroom to give privacy. This here is another shot of the cupboard that I talked about with the sort of the blind coming down. Art is very important, right, Greg? Art is very important. And so, my wife will put all kinds of art on the wall. Something else I wanted to show you. Remember I said, tenants or residents or couples that play together, stay together, families that play together, stay together. This thing that you see on the wall actually dismounts or demounts, and it has a bazillion games. You can play backgammon, chess, checkers, I think Scrabble, all kinds of things. It's a really cool device. You can take it off and you can do that. And so the little work area is actually here. All right, so this chair actually swivels, and this is the little work table here. So you could put your laptop on it, or you could put your dinner on it. So it's pretty small, but there you go. And you notice that we use these blinds. They're like California blinds. They're a little bit more expensive, but they look good. We never allow any of our tenants to put their own window coverings on. And the reason for that, some tenants would put a marijuana flag up or something like that. It would look atrocious. Not that there's anything wrong with a marijuana flag. I just don't want it on any of my buildings. And again, you can just sort of see what it looks like. The only thing that you might struggle with, I do yoga 2 or 3 times a week. It's a little bit tight for that, but I would probably find a way to do bed yoga. A couple more shots here. This is a nighttime shot. It's quite pretty, I think. That's a little bit of a closer up look at the close-up look at the game, and then of course lots of internet connections here. I think this is a Google Mesh system, and it's very fast. And then privacy is important. And so one of the things that we did, this is kind of the hedge that you can see here. You can sort of see it a little bit more here. We put up a fence here to give the bunkie a little bit more privacy. Here's Pat. I think that's his son PJ there. So we put up a fence so that the bunkie itself would be, somewhat private. And then, of course, we built a deck. I think outdoor spaces are very important, especially in cold weather cities like Ottawa, where Northern Shelf City, we're cooped up at 20 below for months at a time. And so the ability to get outside and enjoy yourself, a glass of wine or something like that is important. So in addition to privacy, well, we were concerned about outdoor space. And so we built quite a beautiful deck, I think. And then you've seen the outdoor ping pong table before, but this is the deck as it's close to being finished. And you get a bit more of a perspective. So now the building is starting to sort of seem like it fits. And when people come to visit us and they see the backyard bunkie that my wife and her team built, it kind of looks like it's always been there. And that's what you want. And I don't care if you're building a subdivision, with the biggest subdivision I built is about 850 homes. And each home, you have to sweat over the location of that home. Don't just let your engineer say, well, it's easiest to put it here. Where does it seem to fit best to the landforms and to the neighborhood? I really sweat those kinds of things. There you can see, there's Arthur again. And I'm not sure if I agree with this, but Peter Drucker is very well respected. He said there are only two things in a business that make money: innovation and marketing. Everything else is cost. Now, I've read that a few times since I put it in this slide deck, and I'm not sure if I agree with it, and I'm not sure if I don't, but I thought it was an interesting quote. In every business that I've coached, whether it's tech business, service business, manufacturing company, real estate, I'm looking for something called differentiated value. Janice, you've known me long enough to know, you've heard me talk about that before. What makes a business today in 2024 work better than pretty much anything else that you could do is differentiated value. How do you differentiate yourself from your competitors, right? And design is certainly one thing. Branding is another. So I'm sure that part of this is right, that innovation is extremely important. Marketing, I guess marketing leads to sales, and without sales, well, your business isn't going to do very well. But anyway, I put it in there for out of interest. So anyway, Dawn put this on this bunkie of hers on Facebook Marketplace, and I've said this before, for an hour and 10 minutes, and she got 52 requests for showing. So I told her, you have to take it off Facebook. You'll be overrun. Okay, so now we're going to get into a little bit more detail than I've done before on the costs and the cap rate. And Greg, is Amy still there? Yeah, so Amy, I want you to listen closely to what we're doing here on cap rate, okay? It'll help you. And I sent you a couple of trainings that maybe you can look at. They're short videos. You know, I'm known for my long videos, but there are a couple of training videos on cap rates that I think you should watch. All right, so let's go through the numbers. These numbers are not accurate to the penny. My bookkeeping certainly could be improved, but they're certainly within probably a 1 or 2%. So we bought the shell from North Country Sheds for $9,999, right? What a deal. And they only charged $275 for delivery. So that was very reasonable, I thought. And then they charged us $1,400 to spray foam the underneath of it. So it wasn't insulated below deck, so to speak. And of course, once we put it in place, we can't spray foam it. So I had to have them do it before they released it from their shop, which they did for an extra $1,400. Then the gravel base you saw was put in place by Paul and Charlotte Lalonde, their company. The plumbing was by far the most expensive thing, hooking up the water and sewer, over $26,000. Electrical, over $12,000. Spray foaming, almost $4,000. The blinds, very expensive blinds, I thought, over $1,000, but that included installation. Appliances and TV, $1,350. The deck was another $5,100. It's cedar. It'll probably last at least 15 years. The fencing was quite elaborate, $3,900. Furniture, kitchen, dishes, cutlery, cookware, $2,100, and our crew was $38,000. Now, up here on the top right, you see a project management fee. That's really, really important. You should pay yourself, and you should account for your time. So I paid my wife, Dawn, $15,000 to do this. I actually put it into the bookkeeping and the accounting, because if you don't charge for your time, you're fooling yourself as to what this thing actually costs. Does that make sense, Amy? You should charge for it. And if you're doing any financing, this is not finance, we just paid for it. But if you do any financing, that is a number that your bank or your lender will accept. Now, I could put $150,000 in there for a project management fee for a project of this scale, but they certainly will accept something that's around 15%. And if you think about it, if you're doing some financing, that extra $15,000, which you're paying yourself, can be financed or financed against, right? So it's very important, especially as you get into bigger projects. So the total cost of this thing was about $115,000, maybe $116,000. the fair market value rent for this thing is around, in this neighborhood, is around $13.50. In British Columbia, it might be higher. In places like Oregon, California, it might be higher. In places like, I don't know, some of the, maybe Mississippi, it might be $950 or $1,000. It'd be less there. But in Ottawa, it would be $13.50. In Toronto, it would certainly be more. Some of my Toronto clients say, well, this thing would rent for $3,000 a month in Toronto. I'm not sure if that's true, but that, it could be exaggerated. But Toronto's market is crazy. But BC is also very expensive, Greg and Amy, you already know that. All right, so how do you figure out a cap rate? You take the rent, $13.50, you multiply by 12 months in the year, and then I multiply it by 0.66. And you've heard me say this before, I'm sure all of you have, that about 34% of your gross operating income in real estate, doesn't matter whether it's commercial, industrial, residential, goes out the window for your operating expenses, your property management, your insurance, your property taxes, repairs and maintenance, your vacancy allowance. Amy, it's everything, but nothing to do with financing. It's just your operating expenses, right? Sometimes it's a little bit higher, and sometimes it's a little bit lower. One of my clients, an engineer, operates a big mini storage business, quite big. And his operating expenses are probably about 22 or 24% of his net operating income. He is one of the most efficient operators I know. But I don't put in 21, 22, 24% because I'm not particularly efficient at operating any kind of a business. I'm very good on the income side, not so good on the cost side, not so good on the property management side. That's just not my skill set, I guess. So I think 34% is reasonable and it's cautious, right? So Amy, you take $13.50 your rent times 12 months times 0.66, and you divide it by your total cost, including the project management fee that you paid yourself. And if you do that, that's about a 9.3% cap rate. So that's not a home run, Amy. That's very good, certainly better than buying a Toronto townhouse. Our group could buy a townhouse and make 3%. Last time I checked, 9.3% is quite a bit better. But I suspect that if you are successful in acquiring this property on Salt Spring Island, that you might be in the 13 to 14%. That is a home run, right? That's how you get rich. At 9.3%, you're still doing better than your bank. You're still doing better than the Toronto townhouse or the San Francisco townhouse. But it's kind of like in baseball terms, it's kind of like a single, right? If it was 11%, it might be a double. If it was, I don't know, 12%, it might be, triple. And 13 or 14%, you're getting in the home run territory, right? Okay. Now, I said, oops, I'm going to go back here. There's a business in this. You notice I put in PB for L. You'll see that everywhere in my writings. That's just the way I refer to it. I think every person on this planet needs a personal business for life. Mine is coaching. I'm going to coach until St. Peter calls me and I go away on my little angel wings, hopefully to heaven, right? I think everybody needs that. Amy, I think yours is your wedding business, right? And the cool stuff that you're doing there. All right, so here's some questions I asked myself this morning. This is kind of cool. I just added it this morning. When is income most important to you or to me? It's when you're starting out, when you're poor, and when you're older, an elder like me, or even older. When should you take your pension, your CPP or OAS in Canada, or your pension in the United States, or whatever? As late as possible. Now, I'm going to tell you why that is. It's kind of counterintuitive. If you can qualify for your pension at, say, age 60, and it pays you, I'm just going to make up a number, say $1,000 a month. But if you wait until you're 70 and it pays you $2,000 a month, well, it seems obvious to me that you might wait until 70 and get $2,000 a month for the rest of your life instead of $1,000. But some people will say, well, wait a second, what if you die at 72, my age? You will only collect your pension for 2 years. So you'd collect $2,000 a month for 2 years as opposed to $1,000 a month for 12 years. But I think they're wrong. And I want you guys to understand that, because as long as I'm able to work, I can take care of myself, my wife, and I still have 2 adult children dependent on me. All right, I got 5 kids, 2 of them are still dependent on me. As long as I'm, my brain holds up and my health holds up, I can take care of my wife and my kids. So when is income most important to my wife, for example? Well, after I pass away. So if she is going to qualify for her pension, which she does, she should take it as late as possible because she wants the highest amount possible when I'm not around. And I think that applies to a lot of people. So I want you to think about that because it's a little bit of a different kind of thing than, financial planners, will give you all kinds of different advice, but this is my experience. And when should you retire? The answer my dad, Professor O.J. Firestone, would give everybody is never. Change what you do, but keep involved in something. Be productive. Keep learning things. It'll keep you young. Does everyone need a personal business for life? In my opinion, yes, because your job can go away, right? I had a friend of mine, he had a PhD in African anthropology, and he worked for the government of Canada doing post-project reviews for 30 years, and then they laid him off. And he was still in his 50s with teenage kids, right? There aren't too many jobs in the private sector for people who've worked for the government for 30 years and have a PhD in African anthropology, right? So it would have been nice if he'd had a personal business for life. And he came to see me and he asked for some help. And eventually I helped him buy a couple of Subway franchises and he made himself $220,000 a year for the last 15 years. Does everybody need some kind of an ARN reserve or a wealthy barber fund? I think so. In my opinion, each of you should open up a bank account at a bank you don't do any dealings with. If you're a Bank of Nova Scotia customer or Bank of America customer, find a bank that isn't associated with either of those two and open a separate savings account and just put some money in there when you can, even if it's $50, $100, and don't spend it. That's called, there's a book called The Wealthy Barber, I think. And I've been asked about keys to happiness and less stress. I think a lot of people on this in this course are looking at that, including yours truly, including myself. If I could move to Lasqueti Island tomorrow and just sit there and contemplate nature, I probably would. I'd still want an internet connection so I could talk to people, but I probably would. And my father-in-law, his name was Ken McMillan, he's passed away. But if Ken were here, he would say, live below your means. He never had any debt in his life, ever. If he bought a truck, he bought it for cash. If he bought a house, he bought it for cash. Mind you, a house back then was $5,500. But, he never had any debt, and he didn't think much of his son-in-law, me. I ran off with his best asset, his daughter. And he, and I built a huge empire on debt, and then it crashed. So if Ken's looking down from heaven, he would say, you tell him, Bruce, you suck. He didn't think much of me. Then the other thing I said earlier was complexity is the enemy of success. Keep things simple. If you're explaining your business, as I said, it's too complicated for people to understand, it probably isn't going to work. And then my wife gave me this the other day, I think it was just yesterday, in terms of, keeping things simple. And this guy, his name is Sahil. I'm not sure if I'm saying it right, but Mr. Bloom, he's a very smart man, my wife said. And he published this and it's all over the internet. It's become like a thing or meme, right? Here are the things he said you should quit doing. Quit focusing on your potential. In other words, get on with things. Stop talking about your potential. Start making life happen. Stop complaining. Stop worrying about the opinion of others. This one, next one, number 4, is really important. If you have anybody in your circle of acquaintances that is bringing negative energy, get rid of them. I'm very good at that now. Don't overthink. I don't know about this one. This is not a problem for me. Number 6. Hit the snooze button. I'm up at 4, so it doesn't matter to me. Stop trying for perfection. Stop treating your house like crap. Well, I wouldn't do that. I'm sure you wouldn't either. This one's interesting. This I fail at for sure. Stop seeking novelty. I like new ideas. I like creativity. So I'm not sure I agree with that, but that was his advice. And stop doing low value tasks. I would put it a little differently. Stop doing everything that's urgent. Start doing things that are important. And the last one I had trouble with, and my wife had to explain it to me, stop relying on motivation. In other words, a lot of people, you know, they make a New Year's Eve resolution. I'm going to hit the gym. And they get, you know, they're super motivated for the next month and they hit the gym. And then after a couple months, they give up. I don't have problems with that. If I set goals, you know, I do yoga 2 or 3 times a week. I'm on my treadmill pretty much every day. I lift light weights. I have a stationary bike. I walk a lot. You know, as when I was younger, I did, of course, much more active stuff. But, you know, don't just rely on motivation. Be able to sustain what you do in work and in play. Okay. I thought these were pretty useful things to include here. And what I said was, I think in this little backyard bunkie thing, I think there really is a business here. And Milen, I think I mentioned this to you. Milen's on the call with us. That if somebody like Milen has, you know, construction experience, and I think she's a PhD in something, and somebody like Milen could certainly, I think, find 10 or more clients every year who would want, you know, a backyard office, a backyard bunkie, a man cave, a she shed, storage, whatever, backyard tiny home. Who knows what they want? But, you know, they're rich, but they don't have any time. And so somebody like Milen, with her project management skills, could say, hey, listen, pay me $15,000, I'll make it happen in your backyard. Just forget about it. 6 months from now or whatever, you'll have something like that. And if she found 10 of those people, she could make 150 grand a year doing it. And actually, you know, I think do something pretty useful for cities and towns. Well, I got through that. I did pretty good. 49 minutes flat. Milen, did you buy that?
Yes, I did. I love the idea and I'm already working on it. You know that.
Yeah. What's your PhD in, Milen?
Actually, it's not related to construction. It's epidemiology.
I'll take your word for it. That's awesome. No, but you know, I know Milen, and when she hears something that she likes, she'll act on it, right? So she doesn't have any trouble with procrastination or motivation, right? So there you go. Before we get into the next thing, I don't know if oh, Elvia's here, good. Before we get on to LVSO's project and Derek Chu's project, are there any questions on what we just did?
I have a question in the chat, sorry. In regards to, we're having some problems with rodents in and around our area, I guess with all the construction. I'm just wondering if there was anything that you would put in place for prevention.
Well, you know, Kim, I think you know the barn dominium project, you know, that I talked about, right? And we own a number of industrial buildings. People, you know, and storage buildings, people have mouse problems, rat problems, all kinds of other problems. And so they have mouse traps, rat traps, mouse poison, mouse bait, rat poison, rat bait. We hire cats and they work for food. And I'm not kidding. We in our industrial buildings, we usually have twins. We have a couple of cats from the same litter. They're buddies, and they live in the building. And obviously, we take good care of them. We take them to the vet and make sure, of course, they're fed properly and they have a good warm place to sleep. And we talk to them and we baby them. You know, we have on-site supervisors, and we don't have mouse problems, and we don't have snake problems, and we don't have rodent problems. They're fantastic. And to me, it's a better ecological solution than, you know, arsenic. So I'm not kidding. I would hire cats, and that's what we do. And that's not new. I mean, gosh, farmers have been doing that. You know, they had barn cats forever, right? So I just borrowed the idea. Milen, did you have a question?
Yeah, I did. I was really surprised by the electrical costs and the plumbing costs. they, other than, what was included in there? Is the whole bathroom and the whole kitchen?
That's a great question, Milan. Yes. When I saw the quote, my wife came in and showed me the quote, I fell off the chair and then I had to pick myself up. I said, what? You know, because she's got lots of good ideas, but some of them are really expensive. So yes, and when it included obviously the bathroom, all of the plumbing, so all of the sinks, the shower, everything that you see there, the kitchen sink, etc. So you know, but just so you know, I mean, Belen, you'll see it when we get to the farm in a couple of weeks. You know, there's quite a bit of work involved in connecting to the sewer system. There's a macerator, so all of the gray water and black water go into this macerator. It's like a garburator, does that, and then it whooshes, it pumps it into the house where it goes through the main sewer. So there's quite a bit involved in it. So it was expensive, but I think probably if we got 3 or 4 quotes, we probably could have shaved that a little bit, but we work with a company. It is a union company, so it's much more expensive than a non-union company, but the quality of the work is fantastic. So you know, the speed was important to us, the quality of the work was important to us, and the price is important too. I think we could have done better. All right, so let's see what we have. We got a couple things in the chat box. Robin says huskies eat mice as well. Okay, I'll take your word for it. I'd rather have the cats. They're a little easier to you know, they're more independent, Robin. Tina Ray, you previously said North Country Sheds is I think this is wiring some units and lowering the price. Yes. Elvia, who's on the call now. Elvia, can you unmute yourself for a minute?
I'm here, Bruce.
How did the pediatrician visit go?
It went well. It's just my daughter's first vaccine, so she was crying a bit, but it's all good.
All right, good. Well, I'm glad you're here. We were waiting for you because we're going to talk about your project next. But you have talked to North Country Sheds, and they are now, instead of just getting a shell like I did and having to go from scratch, I think they're going to deliver something for your project that's a little bit more developed.
Yep. So I think they're offering these things called 4-season cabins where it already comes insulated and has the electric, rough-ins in the unit. So you don't have to go through some of the steps that Bruce went through with some contractors. It's more plug and play. So you would still need to get the gravel padding done yourself. And if you need any electrical trenching, that would be on top. And also if you are bringing plumbing to the unit, that would also be extra, but it simplifies a couple of the steps that Bruce shared earlier.
Yeah, and also, Elvia, when for your project, which we're going to turn to now, we're talking not bunkies but workshops. So workshops, Tina Ray, are much simpler. You are providing reverse cycle heat pumps, so you have heat and air conditioning, obviously electrical. But you are not providing bathrooms, you're not providing sinks, you're not providing kitchens. There's a lot of things that don't go into a workshop. A workshop typically will just be that. It's a workshop where you go to work. And if you have, say, 30 of these, say Elvia at some point has 30 of these things, there will be obviously bathrooms that people can go to, but it'll be, 1 or 2 bathrooms that serve 30 workshops, not individual bathrooms, right? So workshops, I think I can do a workshop for about $30,000 to $35,000 finished. And Elvia, I think will probably knock at least $10,000 off of that because she'll get something that's more developed. So that's a great question. All right. So we're going to turn now to Elvia's project. I'm going to share my screen again. We're making good progress. And so this is a project that some of you have seen before. It's called the Village Workshops and Storage Solutions in a small town in Ontario, Smith Falls, population of about 10,000. Probably in the area, when you include Carleton Place and some of the other nearby communities, it's 30 or 40,000 people, but it's not a million people. It's quite a bit smaller than that. It was originally started by Matt Woodworth and Michelle Woodworth, Woody Woodworth, and Michelle. And they started it, they found the site, they developed it to a certain extent. And then Woody calls me up one day and says, Michelle and I had bought this wonderful business called the Brick Painters. And what they do is they take traditional Main Street buildings that have fallen on hard times, and they paint the brick so it is restored to its historical look and feel. It's fantastic what they're doing. And that business has exploded on them. So one day Woody calls me up and says, hey, I got to focus on this other business. Would you help me sell the village? And I said, sure. So Elvia and Derek, young people obviously based in Toronto, were interested in doing something like this. And so they purchased it. These are the facts. So this is on the left here, you can see the survey. It's an old survey. This is Highway 43. It's quite a busy road. And there's about a 6.6 acre site, if you can sort of see it in yellow here. And there's a right-of-way here, and I think there's another right-of-way here. So this is a property of 6.6 acres that is on a major street or highway, but it does not have direct frontage. It has another parcel in front of it, which was an old furniture store, and you'll hear more about it. But anyway, it's an interesting site. I love the zoning on it. The zoning is highway commercial. We're going to talk about that a little bit more in a minute. And it's about 3 or 4 minutes from downtown Smith Falls, so it's quite close to the inner core. The traffic count on Highway 43 is about 7,600 vehicles a day, and there's an existing structure on it, which you'll see, which on 2 levels is about 4,000 square feet. When you're buying some kind of an industrial property, if there's an existing building on it, that is probably a good thing. Then Woody and Michelle added a new 200 amp electrical service. It's underground. It's an excellent service. And then, of course, you've got a legal description here. Every property has some kind of a legal description, and it has in Ontario something called a PIN number, a property identification number, which identifies each property individually in Ontario. You want to hear a funny story? Somebody say yes. Give me a, okay. Yeah.
Yes.
Heck yeah.
Want to hear a funny story? As a realtor, as a coach, I have to pay HST. I collect HST, I have to pay it. Government of Canada wants to get paid. I'm cool with that. So I think I have to do it every 3 months. I send them a check or write or pay it online. I actually pay it online. It turns out Canada, which is not that well governed in my opinion, HST numbers and SIN numbers are exactly the same length, same numbers, same number of digits, okay? So when I go on my Bank of Nova Scotia account and I pay my HST I have to put, and it says, pay your HST here. You put in your HST number. For about 9 months, I paid about $37,000 or $38,000 of HST online. Then I get a call from Canada Revenue Agency saying, from a, like a bill collector, when can we expect payment? I said, what? Your HST, there's a $38,000 HST amount outstanding, plus now interest and penalties. I went, what? And so I said, no, I paid it. I can show you. It's on my Bank of Nova Scotia, payables. And I now you can imagine bill collectors hear this all the time. Oh no, I paid it. So you can imagine they didn't really believe me. But I said, wait a second, I'll prove it to you. I have every payment I've made. So it took the Canada Revenue Agency 6 months to figure out that my HST number matched somebody else's SIN number. So my $38,000 of HST, they got a tax refund for that amount. Imagine that, a check for $38,000 showing up. You go, this is great. Canada's sending me money. And it took them 6 months to reverse it, obviously. And today in Canada, because of me, you can no longer, as an individual, pay your HST online through your bank app. You cannot. You have to now friggin' write out a check. It's probably the only check I do, and snail mail it into them. And they got to say, is this an HST check or is this a income tax? And is this a SIN number? Can you imagine how stupid you are to create this huge system? I mean, HST, they could have added another 3 digits, right? But they didn't. Anyway, there you go. That's government for you. I don't know why I told you that story, I just thought it was funny. Okay, well, maybe there's a relevance here. When you buy commercial property and HST is an addition, you are allowed to something called self-declare. So if you ever buy an industrial property like this, as long as you personally or your company are registered for HST before you close, you can self-declare and not pay it. And there's a whole long discussion about that, but I'll run out of time, so I better not do that. All right. So here's what Elvia was thinking of, and before Elvia and Derek got a hold of it, Woody and Michelle were thinking of that they could use this property for storage, workshops, parking, contractor yards, containers, I call them sea cans, auto sales is permitted, could have a restaurant or food truck here, which I like. And look at this, you guys, accessory residential, I bolded that for you, okay? I want you to remember that. That'll be important. There's just the survey again, and you can notice that there's topos on here, topographical elevations. And that's important because when you file a site plan, you need to have stormwater management. A site plan for Elvia and Derek in Smith Falls is much easier to do than, say, a place like Ottawa. I think there's only 3 requirements. What is the traffic implications? How do you manage the stormwater, and how are you going to do lighting so that it doesn't shine into your neighbor's eyes? That in Ottawa, it would be a $300,000 site plan, and it would take you 2 or 3 years to do. In Smith Falls, it's much simpler. So that's good news. So I said it was 6.56 acres. You can see it here. And you can see that Woody and Michelle, they actually gravelled about 1 acre of it. So 1 acre is now ready to be developed. And there's a Quonset hut here, which you'll see in the next slide. So this Quonset hut was in pretty poor condition. I mean, it was actually structurally very good, but it had been allowed to degrade. One thing about real estate, you guys, the enemy of success is not just complexity. It's also something called deferred maintenance. If you own any buildings, you have to, you have to stay on top of maintenance. You have to paint them every once in a while. You have to keep on top of it. If you allow deferred maintenance to build up, your buildings will degrade. You'll lose your tenants. Your brand will suck, right? You won't attract the right people. Anyway, here's some pictures inside. So it's in actually pretty good shape. It's a great storage building. And Woody and Michelle improved it quite considerably by adding the new electrical service and also improving the structure. So there's an office here that Elvia and Derek are going to re-insulate so that they'll have at least one small office that people, whoever the entrepreneurs are who come here to make this Quonset hut theirs, they'll have a place in the winter and in the summer that they can use as a small office. So it has great potential. Just an aerial photograph of the site. This is only 1 acre of the site, and the site is, as I said, over 6.6 acres. So here now is the reason I'm showing you this slide deck. I'm actually going somewhere with it, but one of the reasons is that this is the slide deck. Elvia, I think I remember, did we not present this to your appraiser before she went out and did the appraisal?
Yep, we presented it both to the appraiser and our lenders.
Yeah, so one of the things I do a lot is if I'm going to get something appraised, before the appraiser, before he or she or they go on site, I'll brief them on Zoom like I'm doing now, and I'll prepare a slide deck. I'm going to do one tomorrow. Alex Long, Elvia, we're meeting with his banker tomorrow, and sure enough, there'll be a slide deck like this, and we'll present that this way. Most banks today, or at least some of them, are going away from the business plan. A business plan is 40 pages, excuse my language, mostly a bullshit, right? And every graph looks like this, right? Just all the spreadsheets look the same, right? I mean, come on. What we do with to replace the 40-page written business plan, it's a slide deck. Some lenders will insist on a business plan. You have to do it, but it's mostly BS. All right. This slide deck is, for most of my appraisers that I work with and most of the lenders I work with, it is actually better. It gives them a better sense of what's actually going on. So what Elvia and I talked to I think it was Rebecca Simon, her appraiser. we went through a slide deck very similar to this. So when it's completed, first phase, it'll have the 4,100 square foot Quonset hut already on there. It's got the 200 amp service. It's got the nice gravel pad completed. What it needs now is fencing, a gate, upgraded lighting, and a security system. If you're going to open this up for parking of expensive RVs and boats, you know, construction equipment can be $800,000 for a big loader. I mean, and these are very expensive. You have to have good quality security, right? So that's something I think that's ongoing now. Correct, Elvia?
Yep, that's right. We're in the middle of drafting our site plan and to get all that installed.
Right. And then Elvia did a really good job on highest and best use. So what is the highest and best use for the site? Obviously, vehicle storage and parking. It's one of the most profitable things you can do. I'll just give you some basic numbers. Say you charge $55 for a car and $85 for an RV or boat. I think Elvia has one client. He parks a tractor trailer, $200 a month. You can get about 80 of those vehicles on an acre. And just to use a conservative number, if you get 80 of them on an acre and you charge $65 and you multiply that by 12, you know, that's $62,400 in revenue from 1 acre of what was previously vacant land. And if you had 6.6 acres full, you know, that's over $400,000 of revenue. So parking is a great business to be in. I got many clients in the States and in Canada who are in that business. So Elvia and Derek are on the right track. Obviously storage, everybody's got too much stuff, everybody. The next one, you guys know, I really like the workshop idea, the small workshops. Boy, I'll tell you that is the market for that seems to be endless. And then there's some niche uses that Elvia and Derek have put down here, which I like as well. Maybe a food truck here, accessory residential and playland. So I think we've dealt with this. And I just had a little bit more detail on the zoning. So this is a fantastic zoning, right? It allows automobile sales, building supply outlet, commercial yard sale, including flea market and farmers market, which I also like. Obviously, commercial storage, custom workshop, you can see down here, is allowed. Restaurant, which would include, you know, a food truck, RV sales, a retail store. It's just endless. A warehouse. I love the accessory dwelling, which we'll talk about more. So office is allowed. I mean, it is a really good zoning. So anyway, this now is some of the sketching that Elvia did, and then some comments from me. So this is, remember, this is just the first acre. So there's the existing Quonset hut. Sorry, it looks a little bit complicated, but there's the existing Quonset hut, which is for lease right now. The blue areas here would be parking for vehicles, RVs, trailer, boats, trucks, cars. The red area would be for workshops, and the green area would be for contractor yards. Every contractor, every electrician, every plumber, all of these, you know, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning folks, they all need yards. They've got trucks, they've got inventory, they got sea cans, right? They might want a heated workshop as well. So there's a lot of demand for that sort of thing. So this is kind of like a block diagram that Elvia did and I commented on. It's actually quite good, I think. And in terms of ingress and egress, we're looking at ingress over here, and because these rights of way are not that big, this one is only 18 feet wide, this one's even narrower, 10 feet. Eventually, as the site develops, it will be ingress here and egress there. I think it makes sense. You know, you got semi-trailers coming in, they'll do that, right? So, but the fact that she has 2 points of access to the highway, I think is important. So, Elvia, this is just me fooling around this morning. One of the things I really am dying to try out, and I think Elvia and Derek might do it, is a newfangled flea market. One of the problems with a flea market or a farmer's market is that you make money, at least in Eastern Ontario, in the summer, but when it's -20, probably not so much. So most of these flea markets, not all of them, but most of them close as soon as the weather gets cold. So probably by the end of October in Eastern Ontario, they're done. And maybe in South Southern Ontario, Southwestern Ontario, near Toronto, they might stay open longer. I think, say, some parts of St. Jacobs, which is the biggest flea market in Ontario, some of the parts of it do stay open year round, but they make most of their money probably in the warm weather months. So here's what I'm thinking is that Elvia rents these nice workshops that she might buy from North Country Sheds, and maybe she ends up with 30 of them on the site. And so somebody, it could be, I don't know, making custom dresses. Somebody else could be providing registered massage therapy service. Somebody else physiotherapy. Somebody else is making widgets. Somebody else is doing art like Greg does. And so what could happen is you could have these things rented year round, heated, air conditioned, they're workshops, and they're productive. But in the warm weather months, throw these doors open and let people come, and it becomes kind of like a flea market, right? So you want to drop in and get a massage with your wife or your husband or your partner, that's fine. You want to buy, maple syrup from the Amish, whatever. I think this will have committed monthly recurring revenues throughout the year, and then some sort of peak revenues in the summer months. We haven't quite figured it out yet, but I think there's potential here. And albeit one of the things that the counselors in the area have told me is that they really want a flea market. I think the township has some money to help with that. So I think that's a possibility. I talked about a playland, which is a multi-generational thing. So, bocce and ping pong and giant Jenga and croquet and horseshoes, these are things that everybody can play. So if you're thinking about any kind of a project, residential, as I said, industrial, whatever, retail, add some kind of a playland, I really think it'll work. This is just more ideas. I like wood-fired saunas. I like playing cornhole because I take my kids every year to the Buffalo Bills. Obviously pickleball and other kinds of things. The other thing I'm working on is a concept of having some commercial patios where you have structures like this. This is actually from my backyard, where you have a shade structure which keeps the wind down, keeps obviously the rain off and the direct sun off. But I think we could do something on commercial patios where we have outdoor spaces that will get a lot more use, because one of the problems with commercial patios, as you guys know, is, it's too hot, it's too cold, it's too windy, whatever. I'm thinking we could do something with this. Obviously, you won't be kayaking in Smith Falls, but, beach volleyball, badminton, pickleball, as I said, all kinds of things are possible. Just for the hell of it, I wanted to show you how a playland can impact a business. This is an aerial photograph of a Home Depot parking lot. And this is actually a food truck, Elvia. And there's a seating area here, which you'll see a little bit better. And the young man who operates this, I said to him, you should add a playland to this thing. And he said, what the heck is that? This is Matt Dobry, and he is, believe it or not, a Red Seal chef, and he runs a food service called Burger Builder. That's a food truck. And he also has, I think, Black Iron Catering. So believe it or not, this food truck is open year round. It's open year round in the sense that during the warm weather months in Eastern Ontario, you can go there and you can get a burger and fries, whatever else you want. And these are gourmet. But in the cold weather months, it's a commercial kitchen, and he provides catering from this kitchen. So it's, and this is here's his catering service called Black Iron. So he started to add games. And this is just in the Home Depot parking lot, giant Jenga, cornhole. Just a picture I took of a young woman operating the vehicle. There's the seating area. Again, keep the sun and the rain off, right? It's important. You still feel like you're outside, but you're protected. And fun stuff like this is a giant Muskoka chair. So these are things that are fun to do. Just so you know, when he added a playland, his sales, which were already very, very good, $350,000 a year from his food truck, and also his catering business, which is very good. The average food truck is about 150,000. He would be double that. But by adding a playland, his sales went to 450 a year, which I think is very, very high for a food truck. It was insane because people would come there, you know, it's a Home Depot, and you know, you'd play with your kids. I mean, in Ottawa, there's not a lot to do. Right? So there you go. All right, and we had somebody ask something here, Tina Ray. And Smith Falls has a really cool train museum. Well, it's not far away. It's only about 3 or 4 minutes away, and you can get the train to Toronto if you want. All right, so let's go back. We're almost done, guys. Thanks for hanging in there with me. All right, so we'll go back over here. Now, Elvia agreed to let me share some numbers with you. So she bought the site from Woody and Michelle for $475,150, and then you have to pay land transfer tax, and then her legal bills were quite high. That's a story in itself. And then she financed 50% of it with her lender, and you know, the rate was about 8%. And she's looking at different kinds of uses in her first phase. So we've got to rent the Quonset hut. We've got to rent some parking spaces. Hopefully we're going to get a food truck operator here. I suspect we will get that. And I'll just keep going. So what she's looking at is perhaps an occupancy rate after the first year of around 90%. I think she'll get there. She's looking at revenues, which would be about $95,000 a year. She has certain expenses, quite high relative. This is even higher than the 34% that you know, my rule of thumb. Her operating income might be $52,000 a year. If the cap rate, it comes out at 8%, fair market value at 5.75% cap rate is about $917,000. So we hope in the next year, maybe a year and a half, the property will double in value. And I suspect that she might do a little bit better. Some other people that I have in this business in the States and in Canada, they've taken properties from $500,000 to $3.5 million. And one of my clients has gone from, he bought this really great site for about 1.2 million, and he just turned down an offer of 9.5 million. And that took about 6 or 7 years to achieve. But that's a pretty good increase in 6 or 7 years. So I think that is a reasonable goal. Now, Elvia and Greg need some help. So the last 5 minutes of our class, we're going to ask, I'm going to turn it back to you guys. I want you to be thinking about this. I don't want you to just sit there and stare at me for the last 5 minutes of our class. Elvia and Derek are improving the site, but their marketing and their sales are slow. Now, what can we do to change that? You guys have seen me hold up an easy button. Everybody needs a magic marketing button, something you press and you get some sales. Whatever that is, we haven't found it yet for Smith Falls. So typical marketing channels are maybe PR, obviously digital advertising, some offline promos. We'll talk about that in a second. Some paid search, email marketing, social media. Maybe there's some influencers in Smith Falls that we can target. But whatever it is, we haven't found it yet, and it's a concern. This is a list that Elvia and Derek put together, which is fantastic. I want you guys to think differently. I think you should look at the village as a platform. You know, it's just like Facebook. It's just like YouTube. It's a platform for entrepreneurs to come and build businesses on. That's the way I want to think about it. And I've got Elvia and Derek thinking that way too. So who would come here and operate a business? Well, maybe somebody who wants to run a U-Haul franchise. Somebody who wants to, say, sell used cars. Somebody who wants to sell tiny homes. Maybe sea cans as well. Somebody who wants to operate a food truck and a playland. Somebody who wants to operate a flea market. Maybe there's 100 vendors out there that want to participate. Somebody who sells landscaping products and materials. That's a very profitable business. Somebody who wants to participate in a farmer's market. Somebody who wants to provide fitness and wellness. Somebody who wants to do registered massage therapy. What about some events here? Pop-up events. Maybe equipment rental. How about a mobile vet or a mobile pet service? One of my clients runs a mobile cat grooming service, very successful. Somebody who runs a greenhouse. And then she went on to say, it's ideal for craftspersons and artisans. Small scale manufacturing, like one of my daughters does. Maybe somebody's doing e-commerce. One of my daughters does that too. Somebody who's a freelancer. Somebody who's doing, I don't know, repairs, or maybe they're a tailor, an artist, a musician, who knows, hobbyist. It's customizable. Some of the things that I've done, and I've talked to Derek and Elvia about it, is that this is a mini storage company I used to run. And one of the things that we did to help our marketing, which was a very important part of our marketing, was we had these postcards. You can see this postcard. It's a two-sided postcard. You can see it on here. It was called Blue Heron Storage. And, you know, it says, hey, have you got too much stuff? You need a safe place to store it. You got no more room in your place. Yeah, you want personal service and attention, you know, come and see us. So we had a very successful mini storage business. And whenever we were down a little bit in occupancy, we would just go out and deliver more of these postcards. And USPS, the US Postal Service, and the Canadian Post Corporation both run a very, very good marketing channel called Postal Walks. In just about every town and city across Canada, the United States, you could do postcards like this, give them to the USPS or CPC, and they will distribute them for you. It's very effective marketing, at least it was for us. The other thing is, I really, really like on-site signage. This is Long Yards, which has been very successful. It's about a 10-acre site in Ottawa. It's completely full, I think, of contract yards. And you can see that on-site signage here is very good. Boats, RV, contractor yards, U-Haul. I mean, it's got all kinds of things. Just signage on the site is good. So I put on the left here all of the different possibilities that exist. Postal walks, the Kijiji. In the United States, it would be Craigslist, but Canada would be Kijiji. Facebook Marketplace is huge. Google your business. Make sure you show up on Google Maps. Paid search. I like releasing videos on TikTok and YouTube. Basically, they're usually learning videos, but it does promote your business. Obviously, they have a website, probably a Facebook page. In fact, they do. On-site signage, and maybe start a business yourself. I'm going to turn to you guys here in just a second. There is one thing that I am absolutely sure would work, except we can't do it. Remember how I said the zoning allows accessory residential? I'm going to stop sharing here. Remember how I said the zoning allows accessory residential, which I really like. Unfortunately, there was a furniture store in the front that burned down a number of years ago. And when the fire department put out the fire, they used fire suppressant chemicals called PFAS. It got into the water table and has infiltrated Elvia and Derek's site, right? That is not a concern for storage, for industrial uses, nothing. But for residential use, it's a little bit more of a concern, especially if you put a well down there and you start drinking PFAS. Now, you can treat the water for PFAS, but it's not necessarily a good thing. So one of the things that Elvia and Derek have committed to the township is they will not add a residential component until Mother Nature cleans up the site, which will happen. Our environmental consultants, Patterson Group, very good group, they say that Mother Nature will clean this up, and eventually they will be allowed. So you could imagine if Elvia was allowed to put 5 tiny homes on this site at some point, you know, people are desperate for a place to live. As soon as they're living on the site, many of them will rent a workshop. In fact, they'll do both, as they have done at the Barn Dominion. So that would work, except we can't do it until we get further testing done. It will probably be at least another 2 or 3 years. Now, we have 4 minutes left. What do we do to help? Unmute yourself, yes, you have a comment. What do we do to help Elvia and Derek get this thing going? Milan, you first.
I have ideas. Well, I wrote them down as we were talking.
Okay.
I agree. Young tradesmen, artisans, craftsmen. I would go to the colleges and talk to the young tradespeople who are graduating from I don't know, whatever. Whatever. I would also join business associations to get myself known locally. Now, don't laugh, everybody. I'm not a multimedia tech, but the radio, truckers are always on the radio. People who don't have access during the day to high tech or online marketing, that might be a way to go. And I was also thinking of a launching event to bring a myriad of people.
That's great.
And also companies, see if there are any small companies that you can partner with who don't already have a storage company.
I love that.
Thanks, Mommy.
I
Those
think
are
that
great suggestions.
those are great. I hadn't thought of event marketing. That's so obvious. Sorry, Elvie, I apologize for cutting you off. Elvie, you talk. I'm going to add that to the slide deck.
And those are great suggestions that we haven't tried yet, so I'm going to add that to the list. And I think there's a bit of a chicken and egg as well here, where we're in the middle of developing the site, and locals who drive by can see that you don't have your gates and fence necessarily up yet. We're kind of advocating for the future, so that could be the other side of things.
Good. All right. So that's really great. Okay, come on, guys. Who's next?
So Elvia, this is Patrick from Humble Creek Homes. Have you thought of integrating your websites, social medias, and other online platforms to a integrated CRM?
I have not. Are you talking about something like Hootsuite?
I'm not sure about Hootsuite, but it's like the client relationship management application where everything is integrated. So all the leads would be funneled into that CRM where you can keep track of everything, and you can continue to you can use those contacts because they've contacted you. You can reach out to them, but it stays in your CRM. And the reason why that's good is because it's connected to your social media. So anytime somebody sends a comment, sends a message, it's tracked. And you could also do marketing campaigns from those CRMs.
Oh, awesome. Okay, I'll look into that. And if I have any questions, I'll reach out to you, Patrick, on which platform you're using.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'd be happy to discuss it with you.
Thank you, Patrick. Anyone else? We got to give Elvia support here. Michael.
Hey guys, I'll jump in quickly. Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I would just do a targeted outreach through the email to the basically the identified parties as you showed there, and also I would add the AI's voice bot personalized outreach. That's something actually we do. So if you're interested, just reach out to me and we'll help you set that up. There's some magic that can happen there. Yeah, that's what I would do. Just
so you guys know, Michael runs a company called Mold Busters, and Michael is a genius when it comes to marketing, Elvia. I'm not kidding. Michael, this morning when I was on my treadmill, I was watching, the 11 things you should quit doing, that I went through earlier in this lecture. And guess what they did? They had Denzel Washington's voice going over these, but it wasn't, I'm 100% sure it wasn't Denzel Washington. These AI, you can have your favorite movie star. I'm not saying it's right, but you can have your favorite movie star. And I think Michael actually has my voice digital. Don't use it.
Yes.
You want to lose sales? Don't use my voice. But Denzel Washington's voice was fantastic. Okay, thank you, Michael. Anyone else want to contribute here before we break?
Hey, Bruce, this is a little out there, but what about like approaching the police about maybe either overflow with their cars and their equipment, or even like an impound lot, or maybe snow removal equipment, something like that? I know it's a little different, but could be an avenue.
I didn't think of that. That's not that out there. I have a number of coaching clients, Elvia, that run impound lots. And those are unbelievably profitable, and that is a great idea. Elvia, after this is over, you should check to see if there aren't any impound lots in Smith Falls. And I think Chris is right. You could reach out to the traffic control people in the area and say, listen, we have 6.6 acres. Do you need places to put cars that you impound? By the way, we just did one, Elvia, here in Ottawa. Unfortunately, one of our tenants passed away. He was very elderly and was quite sick. And you know, his body wasn't claimed in the morgue, and we couldn't find a will, and he's estranged from any family, but he has a beautiful Jeep sitting in a parking space, and we couldn't keep it there. So we had to call, you know, because we don't own it, obviously. We had to call the impound lot. You need to have a judicial order, and they came and they collect it and they put it somewhere. And eventually, after 6 months, if nobody claims it or there's no trustee in place, you know, that they will sell it. It's a beautiful Jeep. So I think that's a great idea, Chris. No, full marks for that. Elvia?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Yeah, we have never considered that. That's a possibility. So we'll definitely look into it.
Yeah, the people to call in Smith Falls would be people who are doing the towing. So obviously the police service will order towing, and there will be tow truck operators in Smith Falls for sure. And those guys always need a place to put vehicles, and sometimes they're buses, sometimes they're trucks, cars. Cars are more usual, but those impound lots are very profitable. I think at Elvia they charge at least in Eastern Ontario $25 a day. So if you're, you know, if you think about it, if you're there for 30 days, you know, that's $50. And if they keep this particular Jeep for 6 months, you know, that's $4,500 in charges, plus of course the towing fee and probably some penalties. I don't know, you end up owing $5,000.
And Bruce, on a side note, just because I'm looking at the impound idea, and I just drove down Carp Road a few times during the Carp Fair and saw hundreds of legal parked cars. That impound could be event-based, and now you're thinking event-based, you could be providing parking and shuttles for other local events.
Yeah, I really like the idea that as a group we came up with, and again, I'm sorry for holding you guys back 4 minutes overtime here, but those were really good ideas. That event marketing idea for the spring is a fantastic idea. You know, inviting people for a barbecue. You know, and you know, hopefully we'll find clients over the next few months, mind you. But I think that's a great idea, and I love the idea of the impound yard and the tow trucks. All right, guys, I expect to hear from you. Right, I want the 2 questions. I want 2 or 3 paragraphs on your goals for the next 6 months, 12 months, 24 months, over the next 2 weeks. I will see you guys in 2 weeks. And thank you again for all of you for attending. See ya.
Thanks everyone for your advice. Cheers.
Bye.